My name is Nigel and welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. Today we are going to be talking all about you are not a tradie, you are a manufacturer. For those in this industry, we often fall under that umbrella of thinking we're a trade because we're often on site, but most of what we do actually happens in the office and in the factory. Today we're going to go a bit deep into this topic, and I've got a team member today joining us, Aaron Gibb, our co-lean coach at the Joinery Coach, but also very much experienced in the industry over almost 20 years or over 20 years working for a joinery company through all the different aspects of that business. Welcome, Aaron. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Nigel. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Looking forward to the discussion today because it's something, we've talked at length in the past. And I think, there is a genuine difficulty in transitioning from, when you've got the tradie hat on, which is when we're on site, versus the manufacturing hat on, which is probably, if you think about the time of a job, it's probably 70% of your time you're in manufacturing mode, maybe 80% of the time. And the final bit is where you're on site, acting and operating like a tradie. So what I would like to do is maybe just start with a few questions in and around, helping people identify that shift. Like, where are you? Where is your mindset? So I know you were actually with us as a member for about 3 years. Would that be right? In the Joinery Coach?
Yep.
I remember I was coaching you maybe in the last year of that period. And, you'd done a really good job of turning the business around, implementing a lot of the things we coach, and even going beyond some of those lean methodologies. So at some point, did you start to think of yourself, first of all, did you think of yourself as a tradie originally? And at what point did you start to shift to thinking, actually, this is manufacturing? The tradie mindset actually isn't helping me at this point.
Yeah, so look, at the end of the day, I probably lost the mindset about being a tradie a fair while ago, like previous to that, only because I went into drafting and sort of really realized that's where I really gathered all the information about, this is actually what's got to happen. It all happens in here, it all happens, and then obviously moves out into the factory and then on site. But realistically, a big nudge for me was seeing someone else who's a much larger manufacturer, and they were a manufacturer, that was how they were advertised. That was basically their core. So for me, seeing, the basics of things that we used to do compared to the things that they were doing and at the speed, very fortunate to see some of the big manufacturing companies on the East Coast, and also very fortunate to see, Polytech in their, big glory movements. So yeah, it was a really, really big change when you start to see, how board gets reduced, and then how other companies sort of go from, the whole knocking it all up, setting it all out, that used to be a job role. All you did was bring cabinets up and set them all up and get out all the bench tops and,
Yeah.
So yeah, when you start to see, other companies do that, and, especially I took a really heavy hand into the drafting side. So, really getting that understanding about how important that drafting role was sort of helped me have that transition that, hey, this is not a trade business. We're here to manufacture jobs and get them out the door realistically.
And you had a fairly high volume, right? So there were certain problems you had to solve, I guess, that didn't allow you to have things sitting around too long or setting up too much.
Yeah, true. Like, we did have it wasn't a massive volume at that point, but yeah, we did have quite a decent volume going out the door, these 2 to 3 every day sort of thing. So something you didn't get a lot of time.
Yeah.
So the problems couldn't be solved, like a tradie problem couldn't be solved with you. The problem had to be solved, previous steps and prior people to you.
Yeah. Based on your experience there, where did you see the difference in the way people talk about measuring, measuring success? So how might a tradie measure success versus, when you got your manufacturing hat on? Because I think they're quite different, right?
Yeah, they are quite different. Obviously tradie measures success because the job's done, client's happy, thumbs up basically.
Yeah.
That's about as much as you get. Is there money in the bank? Maybe.
Yeah, if they're an hour or two,
busy?
If they're an hour or two over or under, they're not too fast. If they're under, they go, cool, we're going to the pub early. If they're late, they go, I've got to get late. I'd have to pick dinner up on the way home. I've missed dinner. So yeah, it's a very different mindset. Yeah. What was your manufacturing mindset once you shifted? What were the things you started to think about success on jobs or in the business?
So I think some of the biggest successes for that, changing to the manufacturing mindset was, actually being able to finish on time. So whether that's finish the job or even just basic things like finishing going home at the right time. For me, that was a massive win to be able to do that.
Repeatability is the word I like to use. And like everything's more predictable and repeatable. So you can go home on time because you don't have all these blowouts and surprises, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you start to really, nail down on things like, was the job profitable? You start to look at things, was my costing on par? Might not be every single job, but, going back and checking, we allowed $4,000 for the doors. Did the doors come in at $4,000? Before that, you wouldn't worry.
Yeah.
You're doing well if there was money in the bank. Where, once you make that change, and that's not always the case, but once you make that change, you start to think about when you go about your price this much for doors, how do they come in? Oh, great. We've had 5 out of 6 hit the mark this month.
Excellent. Yeah.
One didn't maybe because there was a damaged door or something, but that does happen. So
yeah. Can you think of a client that's gone through that recently or this year that, maybe was the more loose around their numbers, but now they're really enjoying seeing the accuracy of, quoting coming in or costing coming in at the right amount, and they're actually going, wow, it's really nice to know the numbers now and see that actually when I price things, they actually can be made at that price, and what a great system. Is anybody you've seen go through that recently, that shift?
Yeah, we've got one client and they've gone through it. I mean, they've done a lot of work, don't get me wrong. They always had time frames, but probably wasn't overly monitored. But then actually now going to, they've now got time frames on all parts of their job, and they can actually go back and see, hey, well, I wasn't nowhere near the time frame for drafting, but my machining and assembly has reduce that. And I think that's something that Leroy's done extremely well, is really focusing on those sorts of numbers, which, is something that you don't often think about.
Yeah.
But just looking at that time frame, knowing that, hey, I can actually start to now predict how long these jobs are going to take and be fairly confident of it.
I think there's that simple rule that if you want to get better at something or understand something better to get better at it, first step is always focus on it, get closer to it, get into the detail of the process, right? The numbers that are happening around that process. Because otherwise, you really are using quite loose mathematics, to gauge success. And in manufacturing, minutes turn into hours very, very quickly, especially across a team of 4 or 5 people, right? So I'm not saying you need to monitor minutes, but you need to understand is probably within a few percent, like within 5%, is my quoting accurate? And the only way to do that is actually be able to take some snapshot times of a job on the floor. And the other one is understanding your overall lead time, and am I losing like days or weeks in certain sections because I'm just not aware like how long it's taking for a drawing to get approved. You're just going to compress your team when they have to do the actual work of building stuff.
And that just brings you back to the whole argument about getting home on time, getting that repeatability. So.
Absolutely. I mean, who doesn't want to get home and spend only 38 hours at work if you can get everything completed in that time frame? I love the story you used to tell, which is once you started to really accurately schedule and your team completed the week's work, Friday afternoon, a couple of hours for the end of shift, you were quite happy to, I'll let you tell the story quickly.
Basically, if you were finished, that was it. Don't bother, Friday didn't have to happen. We'd met our targets.
So guys got a bit of time
every week. Yeah, it didn't happen every week, but it is something that we often overlook. It's always it's the same old, you've got to be there, you've got to be here for this amount of time. That's what I'm paying you for.
Yeah.
Which is, all led back to that tradie mindset where the time frame, I'm paying you for 38, you need to be here for 38. But if you're manufacturing and you've hit your target, then, what's the sense? There's no, you don't have to. Why come in?
Well, actually, starting next week's work on Friday can actually end up becoming a problem, can't it?
Yeah.
Because everything might not actually be there per the start time. So we don't, being ahead of schedule, a lot of people like that, but really, I always say challenge what's the real reason for that. It's really a cushion. You're looking for a cushion for problems that may or may not happen. And that cushion costs you a lot of money. To have a 2-week buffer somewhere is going to cost you cash. And if there's not really any problems that take up that time or that buffer, then it's really not an effective spend of that money. All right, so just end this section around identifying the shift. Like, how do we identify the shift, either in yourself or in your company? Am I still thinking like a trader or a manufacturer? What's the moment when either when you go to a site visit or when you are maybe seeing people upload their videos or photos of their factory, is the moment an owner still thinking like a tradie?
So just looking at like the office process, the factory process, there's two major ones for me, and that is setting up the job and also having that big buffer like you just mentioned. If they've got two, or we need to be 2.5 weeks ahead or something like that at all times, to me that is one of the biggest ones. That's where I say, okay, that's where they're still stuck in that tradie mindset, because they're just not confident. They're not looking at it from a repeatability circumstance. They're waiting for something to go wrong, probably more so begging for something to go wrong to prove that they need to have that.
that is a kind of effect that happens. It's like, see, I told you we needed to do all that. But then, like, when did that last happen? 2 years ago. Okay, so we had all that for 2 years. Because obviously having lots of parts sitting around the factory, we call this WIP, right? Work in progress. So stuff that people aren't touching and building, it's just sitting on trolleys or it's piling up on a machine. It could even be cabinets without doors on, anything that's waiting around. These are all signs of someone that's still already thinking like a tradie. Not really thought about manufacturing. Because manufacturing, you immediately start to challenge that. Why is that sitting there for 2 weeks? We paid for the material, we paid for someone to half put it together, and then we didn't get paid for it because we couldn't get it out the door. So, a manufacturer will start to really work out why that's happening and solve that problem. So there's very little WIP on the floor. That's the sign of a manufacturer. You walk in, all they've got is today's work, and by the end of the day it's gone, and tomorrow's work is appearing in the trolleys, and that's really the limit. That's how much WIP you need. What's interesting, we're talking about it being a mental shift, right? But it shows up in physical things. What would you say, the last thing on this, what would you say you'd see in the office that is a sign of someone still thinking like a tradie?
I think it really comes down to, and it's generally sort of driven by the salesperson, as in, we just need to sell, and give.
Yeah.
I think, for me, that's probably the biggest one.
And what's the sign of that? I guess what was the symptom? Because often there's not a lot of, information around in the more traditional businesses, tradie-based business. So what's the physical symptom you might see, either in the office, on the floor, of someone just sell?
Yeah, stressed, overworked.
Loads of quotes in the system.
Yeah, they got stacks of quotes there. They've got to get, it's a 3 to 4 week period turnaround to get the quotes out because we've got a pile that we can't jump over.
For me, it's the bit of paper. It's the quote on a bit of paper, a scratch quote. Oh yeah, rough, kitchen, this much size, 30K. Here's the quote. It's like, wow, that's going to be hard to do much with that, other than just knock it up. And I think there are clear symptoms when you see this environment enough, especially when you see one that's really made a good transition to manufacturing. Really highlights, all the problems are really obvious when you walk into a shop that's still got that tradie mindset.
The Joinery Business Podcast is sponsored by Flexijet 3D. Flexijet is an automated laser measuring system, the next evolution in digital measurement technology. With seamless CAD integration, easily generate 3D on-site models that integrate directly into your design software. With guaranteed accuracy, Flexijet delivers perfect, high-confidence fits for intricate joinery and complex architectural projects. And the cherry on top, Flexijet has localized support that provides comprehensive solutions and expert technical support tailored for your team. At the Joinery Coach, so many of our clients are using Flexijet every single day, creating full, accurate measurements and saving so much time and energy. Jump on the Flexijet website at flexijet3d.com.au and request your tailored demonstration today.
All right, so we'll just make a bit of a shift now into maybe a bit more around, what are some of the pain points that people might be feeling? Big thing we see in people that have still got the tradie mindset, very busy, but broke. So everyone's working really hard, everyone's cutting and building and installing and rushing around all over the place, but the bottom line is just not there. The P&L's showing that we're just not, we're barely turning a profit, which means anything big comes along, we're nervous about that putting us upside down, right, financially. So it's a very nervous, kind of anxiety-driven environment because we're just hoping that big thing doesn't happen. But we're all just treading water, right? It does never seem to be getting ahead. What would you say is, because a lot of this can start with pricing, right? Or the way what we're doing in the quote, like how detailed are we getting? What do you think is, again, more evident in the tradie mindset that can hurt you from a manufacturing standpoint if you don't shift the way you think about pricing or quoting?
Yeah, look, I think labour is a big one. There's not one instance where I can really say that labour wouldn't be probably one of the biggest things that people, struggle with. Right. Whether we're guessing it, whether we're having maybe we've got a formula that we sometimes use to get us our labour. It's just definitely not right. We're not capturing. We're not actually even comparing whether it was true or not.
What's the biggest thing you see missed in the quote other than labour? Like is it maybe the way they're attributing profit, or is it, what's kind of one of the big things you see really commonly done in the quote
Yep.
that you just go, that's going to hurt. If you don't get that right, that's really going to be painful.
As in like missing materials or
Yeah, or maybe the markups are in the wrong place.
I think probably more the overheads and markup. You know, a lot of times you'll find people that have very small overhead charge, but then they whack on like a 40% profit.
Because we want the numbers to be real, right? We want them to actually go, well, what is your overhead cost? And actually factor that in as a percentage and have real numbers rather than just the kind of like, peanut butter spread formula. I'll just make it 30, 30, 30, 10. And just very kind of basic stuff, not actually working it out. Because the other thing I think as well is a sign of someone with a tradie hat on still, is there's no real terms and conditions about how they operate with their clients.
Yeah.
So they think it's all the old promise, the spit and the handshake. That's probably very old school, but that whole kind of thing. He's a good guy. I've known him for 10 years. He'll be good. And then something goes wrong one end or the other, and suddenly that deposit is not handed over, and you've already started the work, and you've already committed to buying material. The overly trusting nature of tradies, especially small tradies, that are just operating with a few builders, and this really, he's a good guy kind of thing. When you go into manufacturing, you've really got to change that because it's a huge risk to the business. You've now got other guys working for you. Their livelihoods are at risk as well, just because you don't have a simple terms conditions document that is going to protect you. But also be very clear about your progress payments and all those kind of things that you need to do with clients. What about the owner, Aaron? Often if we go to a shop, maybe, probably where this is most evident is a shop with maybe 4 to 8 people in it, where you see the owner is often wearing a theoretical cape, because they're basically the bottleneck or the one point of call for every problem in the business. It could be a sales problem, could be a customer problem, could be a machine problem, could be... Do you see that very often in those kind of businesses when they join? And what do you think... Like what's some of the problems that could come from that?
Yeah, so you definitely do see that, and I'll put my hand up and say, I've been there, I've been in that situation myself. So and problems, problems that come from that can really stem from your own employees not having trust because it doesn't matter what I do, they're going to change it. They're going to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah.
The other one is that person then doesn't, the owner doesn't get any time back. So they're putting out all the risk.
It's funny, isn't it? Because often that's something we take on as one of the primary problems. Like, I'm 60, 70 hours a week. But when we look at what they're actually, because the first thing we ask them to do, write down everything you're doing, right? Write down the tasks that you're actually doing. Because maybe some of them can be done by someone else. Maybe it can be delegated. Maybe you can just not do them because there's no value to them. But you typically find they're doing pretty much everything. They're doing sales. They're trying to fix the machines. They're all over the place. They're dropping out to site doing check, measure, and install. And for me, it's like that's the limiting problem of the business. You cannot grow when you're doing that. There's no way because you're already maxed out at 60, 70, 80 hours a week. You're bound to be making probably a lot of errors. And then the effect of the team is like, oh, don't worry, the boss will do it. They'll sit back and wait for you to come in and do that section. And a lot of it's, helping people to let go, right? And the easiest way to do that is to create a process you can take them through and they can see that it works. So like when someone else does it, this is how they're going to do it. Oh, cool. If they do it that way, I'm happy that it'll happen and be done correctly. As opposed to just delegating stuff off, but it's still in the person's head. And they're actually delegating off and the person's going to reinvent the wheel or do it their own way, which may not give them the best result each time. So I think it's a real limit to growth, but it's also, going to affect your sanity if you keep operating at that level. And then if you do burn out, you're not there in the company anyway, and then everyone's going to kind of have a bit of a problem because they are used to going to you for solutions and answers. I fell into that in my early career as a manager. I look at it back and I think I was probably a bit controlling because I like to be in charge. I like to know everything was going on, and I felt responsible. So I felt I had to be involved in everything in too much detail. But like everything, life tends to teach you these lessons, and I had an injury where I could no longer do that. So I had to adapt and kind of build trust with my team and learn to do all those things that we start to coach at the Joinery Coach. And it really did change my life. It was really transformative for me. It made me really look back with a different way at what I thought success was. Success is when you do everything really well and, you're running on all cylinders and, working 6 days a week. It's like, no, nothing is further from the truth. I just got off a call actually yesterday and actually talked at length about how their weeks are, how their lives are now. How they literally never do more than 37 hours of work a week. They're actually now looking to take every other Friday off. And they said it's just beautiful having everything so predictable in the shop, so reliable, even on install. And I remember he said, you told me this would happen if we did everything we were supposed to do after about 2 years. And he says that's actually what's happened. So they're really keen to go on to the next part of the journey. because it doesn't end there. Just because everything's smooth, okay, cool. What's the next step on the ladder? All right, so obviously no good being the owner if you're constraining the growth of the business or the growth of your employees so they can step up and take things on from you and allow the business to function better, right? Because it won't be functioning well if you're doing 80 hours a week and trying to touch everything or touch bases with everybody. What about, there's a famous saying here, I'm not Australian, but there's a famous saying here, I do use it occasionally. She'll be right. It's a very common saying. Yeah. And, it's a nice saying because it kind of puts people at ease sometimes, if they're worrying about stuff. But it doesn't really have a place in manufacturing. It's like saying, I hope that job goes out today. And someone said to me once, there's no hope in manufacturing. Either you have a plan or you don't. And the plan will say whether that's meant to come out or not. So what does the plan say? And I had to go back and write the plan. I said, oh, okay. If nothing goes wrong, the plan says that should go out at 3:00 today. All right. So I think, she'll be right may work in a tradie mindset a bit better, but definitely doesn't have a place in manufacturing. What could be the hidden cost of that attitude at work? She'll be right. Like, what could you miss? What opportunities could you miss? Like, the typical one is like, I'm coming around the shop floor and there's a job that I'm really hoping is going to, per the schedule, should be finishing today. But the team know it's not going on the truck tomorrow. It's going to go maybe a day after. So when I walk around and I say, it's not finished, what do they say to me? She'll be right. She'll be right.
We'll get it done.
I'll get it done tomorrow. Be all right. The truck's not coming till Friday. I go, but now we've blown the hours. That was meant to be X number of hours, and now we're over. Now we've not made profit on the box. So yes, we'll be all right for delivery, but we're not okay from a cost perspective. We've just lost the profit in the factory on that job. What are some of the other things you think, with that phrase or that mindset could actually be hurting a business?
Yeah, look, definitely in the drafting, should be right. Someone else will fix it.
So I should.
That's always a good one.
It is a classic, though. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely, drafting. Any errors or laziness to actually complete the work that you're meant to do. Like you're not going to expect someone on the assembly bench to only put 5 screws in the cabinet when there should be 10. Why are we?
Very good analogy. I like that. Yeah. Very good.
Why are we, drafting the job and only putting in half the cutouts when we should be cutting out for sinks and cooktops and, ovens, whatever the case may be. So, I think that is a big one. We tend to miss a lot of things because we just, someone else will do that.
Yeah.
Like they can worry about that in the factory, they'll go and spend time and cut it out.
I've heard the comment once, but they're tradesmen, they'll fix that up if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, aren't you a tradesman too? Normally the drafters are ex-tradies or have that experience in Joinery, right? So wait a minute, surely if you know about it, you can maybe fix that in the drafting phase, right? Yeah, it is. We've got to look at each section of our business. We look at those 4 chunks: sales, pre-production, which is typically drafting, manufacturing, which is our cutting assembly processes, and install. And you've got to think of them like 4 different businesses. And are they all making the profit they're supposed to make? Because there's no point making 15% profit in the factory and the other 10% profit outside. There's your 25%, but drafting have caused 22 errors that have cost you 10% of that profit. If we are having a pain point in the factory because we don't understand where we're losing that time or that money, that can become a really big point of stress in a business. We just see the job at the end and we go, we only made 5% on that. We quoted it at 25% profit. Where was the loss? It's very easy for one team to go, we didn't make any mistakes. My drafting team might go, no, it was all good at my end. And then we go to the factory and they go, no, we were fixing up lots of errors from the machine or from drafting or whole positions. So it can become a quite defensive environment, right? Because when there's a problem, we don't really know where to go look. We haven't really been capturing information at the right point. And just the last thing I'd say about tradie mindset in this particular aspect, a tradie's mindset, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's inspected, I think. When you're out on a site, let's say you're a plumber, electrician, doesn't matter which trade you are, but you're out on the site, when you have a mistake or something go wrong, and it's in your work, so it's not another trade has done it to you, it's in your work, your mindset is to fix that, not to go and tell someone, report it. It's like, if it's within my power to fix it and I have the materials and the tools, I'm going to fix it. Even if I need to go down to Bunnings to buy something, my job is to fix it. Unfortunately, when we have tradie mindset in the factory, it's applied the same way. We've stuffed something up, I can see some material, I'll go and rip a new piece off and I'll fix it up and no one will know and the job will go out the door. Because, tradie mindset, we're just going, is the job done? That's our kind of our thing of success. We're not going, hey, you're hitting the time and was there any rework or any defects? Which is the manufacturing mindset, right? So it's very different. And the manufacturing mindset exposes those problems. And we have to make sure when we expose them, we're not looking at people, we're looking at process. Otherwise, they won't tell us again. If we go, that was your fault. Yeah. Okay, good luck me telling you next time. So we just go, hey, what was wrong with the process? Was it the tools? Was it the material? Was it, didn't give enough space? You damaged something when you were trying to maneuver it, We're always hard on the process, never the person. So definitely manufacturing, we're focused on flow and anything that stops the flow from once the sale is made to when the job leaves the factory. Because that is a time-bound process and that is your lead time. And again, tradies don't often think about lead time. They'll use a lead time that is generic in the industry or another company they've worked for. So what is the standard lead time that people throw out in our industry for a kitchen? If they're making
6 weeks.
Yeah, right. Sometimes 8, right? So it's always around. But when you measure it, when you actually do something to validate whether it's really taking that long, and there's a very simple thing we're going to talk about in a second that you can take back from this podcast and actually go into the shop and measure your lead time. Because there's no point quoting 8 weeks or quoting 6 weeks and then taking 10 or 12. It's an immediate disappointment. And it really just tells us we don't really know our numbers. We're not actually sure how long things take. And the easy exercise we can do, a practical, stealable framework you can use today is, as I said, if you think about sales, pre-production, production, and install, and think of the handoff points in between. So when a job is won, hands over to pre-production. So you can timestamp that. So just write down date and time. When the job goes then from pre-production to production, so when they hand over, say, oh, the drawings are done, everything's signed off, everything's approved, materials are ordered, when they hand over, timestamp that. Then when production does their bit, hey, they received the stuff, they've knocked it up, put it together, put it on the truck, that's your third timestamp. And the last one is when the job is installed and completed and customers walk through and gone, yeah, happy. Because that will be your lead time. You may not like the numbers, but that is the reality. But what would be interesting is to look at each chunk and which chunk was most surprising. I think what surprises me the most with clients that are maybe still in the tradie mindset is having no real expectation around approval times for drawing revisions or variation approvals, So they really get stuck for a long, unnecessary length of time in that pre-production period because we're not setting, hey, you got 7 days to do the drawing approval. That's our standard. If you struggle with that, let us know. We might be able to extend the day or two, but in order for us to meet your project time frame and our lead time that we promised you, that bit needs to be done within whatever time frame we're giving you. Even procurement, there's no point. I've worked with as a manager myself. I got quite frustrated with people in procurement teams who were ordering special kits for products. So like they're unique. They go, yeah, we've ordered it. Cool. When's it going to be here? Oh, I didn't ask that. Well, wait a minute. The project starts in 2 weeks. I need to know if it's going to be here when we start the project. Then they have to go and quickly call up and go, oh yeah, the dates are this. So, this is the kind of detail we really care about manufacturing because, very important that we start things on time. Once they're scheduled, once that job is programmed out, very important we start on time. Otherwise, if we don't start on time, we start late, we're compressing people's work. We're basically saying, yeah, we did have 4 days to do that, but because we didn't order stuff on time, we now only got 2.5 days. So either it's overtime or rush. Overtime is obviously going to take straight out your profit bottom line. And rushing is going to also affect your bottom line because people are going to make more mistakes and hide those errors, fix them up, and potentially even have an escape go all the way down to site. Something that wasn't captured because we're rushing things now. So we absolutely want to make sure we really understand our lead time. And this simple, as I say, free steal from today's podcast is just do those timestamps at those 4 points and just see how many days or weeks it sat in those sections. What I'd like to do now is maybe focus in more on, your direct experience with clients. Kind of what some of the benefits when you do put on the manufacturing hat, and maybe even talk from some of the benefits you saw when you were in your role at the joinery company you were working at. I'd like to think of a real life story or scenario of where you saw a dramatic reduction in time. It could be where they maybe just move something closer, right? So reduce walking time. Yeah. It could be something where maybe we changed how long it took to load the truck. It could be any process where a simple thing was implemented or done, like low cost or easy to do, but it had really significant change in the time it took to do something.
I've got two real world examples that I think anyone who's got a joinery shop will understand, and that's both offcuts and edge tape offcuts.
Do you mean like the managing and storage of those?
Yeah. How you manage the storage, how you use them, just to cut down that time frame. or even the errors. We even spoke about, it's funny enough, we spoke about this in our Wednesday group session, about pulling out the edge tape if it was stock and writing the job name on it, just on the off chance that someone picks up the wrong cut, it's generally not so much the wrong color, it's more the wrong finish.
Right.
They put sheen on matte or matte on sheen or something along those sorts of lines. So yeah, for me, they're dramatic improvements. You can go from spending probably in total, a good couple of hours looking for a piece of offcut where the drafter, he needs to go and check every job. This was, the old mindset was we'd go and check, all the offcuts every job and see if we can use one of them. So very, very quickly, having it in an organized rack with a very simple organized system that he can access. So whether it's a spreadsheet or whatever the case is, however you want to, record it so they can access it. They can then very clearly take that out or change the color of it so that they know it's been used. And when the job goes down, guys in the factory can then go, oh, okay, well, we've got 15 sheets of color board plus this half sheet or whatever that's in the rack. They go and they'll write the job number and so forth. And obviously there's rules you put in place to protect those sorts of things. But the time save on every single job is there. This is not a one job a week. This is every single job that happens. You're going to save, a good, I'd say 1 to 2 hours, if not longer, depending on, walking distances and how much offcuts and bits and pieces you have, From what I've seen, a lot of people are going to have a lot of offcuts, so it can really sort of extend to quite a lot of time. And that can be, we all know that. Well, we always think that board is the most expensive thing, but time is really, really expensive. So
that's right. Yeah. This is often an initial thing we look for, right? It's like how back to Tradie mindset. Tradie mindset is like, let's save everything, right? Might need it one day.
Yeah.
I could use it for this. I could use it for that. So it's evident is when you walk in a shop, you'll see lots of offcuts laying up against the wall. That's a really big sign. I was thinking how many times has that board been moved? How many times someone had to search through it to find what they need? And it slowed them down, right? So every time that board is now, adding cost to the business, but it's not adding any value, just adding people's time to move it around, search behind it, or even it's even hiding things, or even worse, it can actually tip over and fall on someone, right? And cause an injury.
Yeah.
We immediately, the first thing we look when we walk in the factory is look for, the stacks of board leaning around the factory wall and go, right, that's the first thing that needs to go, guys. Either, store it, repurpose it, use it for making carts, but you can't just leave it leaning up against all your wall space. The one I really like, which is really measurable and really quick to prove, and I remember one client did this, and I think, because they were fairly high volume, like maybe 2 or 3 jobs a week, but they were loading the truck, right? So they stack all their cabinets, or they line them up in the finished goods area, and they load the truck. 2 guys load the truck, side loader, they're back it in, load it up.
Yep.
When we talked about the concept of a skid on wheels at the end of the bench, and you load and double stack on and then you can come in with a forklift and load it. I think they timed it, and I think just in 1 week, when they timed the guy loading 3 jobs versus taking on wheels, 8 or 10 cabinets at a time, rolling them down and having the forklift put them on and slide them on, I think they said it was about 15 hours a week.
Oh, easy, yeah.
15 hours. That's another job. That, and plus all the strain off the guy's back and neck and the risk of reducing damage. So I think that's a really easily demonstrable, massive time saving. And the other obvious low-hanging fruit is just stopping some of the setting out. Not everything.
Oh, yeah.
But just the really basic stuff. Like if you're putting together, based on a basic 2-door cabinets and screwing them all together, final fit, really challenge why you do that, especially if you've never really found an error with those type of products. But I understand curves and around appliances, you might be a bit nervous doing that. And we always say, look, if you can just remove half of what you're doing today, that's going to be a massive win. And just keep it around the things that actually you are concerned about whether they're going to line up or fit properly. But yeah, I think that those are really obvious 2 things that you could literally just stop doing tomorrow and knock up a small skid with a couple of wheels and see an immediate, 10, 20, 30, 40% shaved off the time to do that task.
And the other benefit that you get for things like the skid, for instance, is tasks that the assembly person has once they've finished going and dragging it off to an area.
Right, yeah.
So, it does have it's like a snowball effect. We've taken the task away, made it very quick to load the job. We've also taken time. So when we do look at it, we want to look at the other person, upstream of the work that's happening, because they're more than likely going to be saving some time frame as well.
Yeah, agreed. So I'd love to dip into your personal experience. I think something that you did really well, and you do really well with clients today, is the quoting to pre-production production handoff. Like, what should have sales have done to make sure that the next group of people has everything they need? Why is that so important? Because what is the gap when that is not done? Like what's one or two things that could go really, really painfully wrong if those handoffs are not done well, especially from the sales?
Look, I think the biggest one is obviously error in finishes, right. Error in colours. That's the most important thing that the person sees when they buy a new kitchen or whatever. And I think that is, if that handoff hasn't got the correct information, board sizing, those sorts of things, even available in that right material.
Yeah.
There are so many. That's why these handover and handoffs to production, handoff into the assembly guys, and handoff out onto site are so important, because if we don't give them the right information, then their job is going to, and especially if we are looking at the manufacturing mindset and we're starting to look at timeframes and giving predictability, we're handing information that someone has to then go and sort back through. We can really, really struggle with A, meeting the times, B, even getting the job right. Too much confusion.
Yeah, I think I see sales job as defining the project, the scope and everything. If that's not defined properly, how can someone else fill in those blanks? And I love the one you say is like, it is sales job. So if there's a curly material or piece of hardware that might have a long lead time, it is sales job to actually confirm whether that's available to define in the project. They can't say, yeah, sure, you can have that. And then the next person goes, wait a minute, this is not even in country and it's like 12-week lead time and you promised a job in 8 weeks. The sale hasn't defined it and hasn't said, yeah, this is possible. We can actually do this for you. So I love those little examples you give and drive home really hard with our clients, because it does make the difference between a successful project or potentially a painful one. So we're getting toward
profitability. Sorry, I know this is, like we really need to push that. That really does put a big strain on profitability.
And like we said, a lot of guys, they're doing it tough out there. They're very busy, but they're just not making money. The profit's not there. And it's all the things we've talked about today that are the leaks in the boat. It's like lots of little holes that need to be plugged. All you're noticing is there's water in the bottom of the boat, not really sure where it's coming from. So our job is to define the process, put the gates in, and actually start to measure those key handoff points. The last thing I'd like to say about manufacturing mindset is it is about sustainability, it is about repeatability, and most importantly, it's this old saying we often say, like, what if this person, the owner, won the lottery, got hit by a bus, couldn't come to work tomorrow for a prolonged period of time? Would your business still function if that person was gone? And I know certainly in a lot of the clients when they first come to us, that is not the case. In fact, that's often the fear. If I was ill or if something happened to me, the business wouldn't function very well. So our real encouragement to shift the mindset from tradie to manufacturer is around, sustainability, repeatable work, manageable work, meaning you can all go home on time, and real focus and starting to measure the things that matter. If we want to get better at anything in our life, better at sports, lose weight, build muscle, we always measure something. There's something, because that's our feedback loop to go, are we going in the right direction? There's nothing you do with a serious nature, even if it's a hobby, where you're intently trying to get better at it, where you don't, where you wouldn't measure something. So why the heck would you, if you're passionate enough to start a business, would you not be measuring some key things? I'd just like to wrap up and say thank you very much. Thanks for you coming in today and giving a really good insight into your experience and your experience with clients and your experience in the industry. And hopefully that's helped to people listening in today about switching that hat, starting to make the transition, because it does first happen. It's got to happen in your mind first. It doesn't happen here first, it's very unlikely going to happen in your business. And we're here to help, around that transition. It can be challenging and difficult. Well, thanks everyone for joining today's episode. Hope you all found a bit of gold to take away with you. So thanks again, Aaron. Have a wonderful weekend and rest of the week, and I'll see you again soon in the Zoom room. Cheers.
No worries.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.